Welcome to VERITAS. Don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification bell so you never miss our latest episodes. Please like this video, comment below with your thoughts, and share it with others seeking truth. For more exclusive content and to support our mission, visit VERITAS7.com.
The questions you always had. The answers you were never given. The place to seek the truth. Welcome to VERITAS.
Tonight on VERITAS, our special guest is Debbie Ziegelmeyer. She is one of the world's foremost authorities on unidentified submerged objects, USOs, and an expert on the astonishing phenomena hidden in Earth's vast and mysterious oceans. A veteran investigator with MUFON, Debbie has conducted over 1,200 case investigations, served as Missouri's state director, sits on the MUFON board of directors, and co-founded their groundbreaking dive team. She is also a PADI instructor, bringing an unparalleled underwater perspective to this field. Her acclaimed book, The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways, compiles evidence from ancient records, medieval texts, modern military encounters, and eyewitness reports from around the world. Her second book chronicles the legendary Southeast Missouri UFO flap of 1973, one of the most astonishing waves of UFO activity in United States history, from ancient sightings recorded in the 11th century to modern Navy videos capturing craft slipping effortlessly between sea and sky, to hotspots like Puerto Rico and California's Catalina Island. The evidence points to something extraordinary happening beneath our oceans. Craft that create no splash, technologies that interfere with electronics, patterns of activity dating back centuries. The questions only grow. Are we witnessing visitors from distant worlds? Or is this something much older? Beings who have long shared this planet with us, unseen beneath the waves. And what might their presence reveal about the true history of our world? Tonight, we bring these questions to one of the top minds in the field. Debbie Ziegelmeyer is coming up next. Welcome to the VERITAS Project. If this is your first time listening, welcome home. To access tonight's full interview and all of our exclusive material, simply join the VERITAS Plus family by clicking on the subscribe button at veritasproject.com. And while you're there, don't forget to check out the VERITAS store for a range of great products, including focused life force energy. Experience the power of FLFE with a 15-day free trial today. No credit card required. Also, be sure to explore our enhanced VERITAS Plus transcripts, offering full transcripts, comprehensive analysis, and exclusive insights for every episode. As a VERITAS Plus member, you'll receive a 50% discount on these enhanced transcripts. If you're looking to get in touch with me, have a guest suggestion, or would like to provide feedback, simply click on the contact button on our website. Your thoughts and ideas are always appreciated. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's program. She is the author of The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways and co-author of the 50th anniversary of the Missouri Ozarks UFO flap. And she continues to drive awareness and research into the enigmatic phenomena that lie beneath the waves. Tonight, we discuss what lies beneath and the secrets hidden in Earth's deepest waters. The Show Me State of Missouri, or Missouri as they call it there. Our website is debbiediver.com. I'd like to welcome Debbie Ziegelmeyer. Hello, Debbie, and welcome to VERITAS.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and this is one of the topics I've been wanting to discuss a lot. Everybody talks about UFOs, but not that many people talk about USOs. We had a couple of people in the past few years, but you seem to be at this. You are MUFON director. So first of all, how did you get into the diving and connecting USOs to it?
Oh my gosh. I was terrified of the water. I almost drowned when I was 2. I almost drowned again at 13. And I mean, so we would go to a lake and I would always say, well, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to stay on the boat. My son and my husband a few years ago decided that they wanted to be scuba divers, and they had so much fun My husband bought me all this equipment and the lessons and said, here you go. And I thought, oh, this isn't going to be good. And actually my very first dive, open water dive for testing, I passed out underwater at 22 feet. I hyperventilated, but I thought I don't ever want to be that afraid of anything again. And I took more and more and more classes. And before I knew it, I was an instructor, and it just, I just threw myself into it. I actually became a diver the weekend after 9/11. And in 2007, I became an instructor. But as I started through the 7+ years of diving, learning and going to more and more dives, I've got, oh gosh, well over 400 dives, and going on cruise ships and diving. I looked around and I thought, wow, it's beautiful underwater. And in 2003, all the way back in 2003, I realized, I thought, what a great place to hide. And I became a MUFON field investigator in 2001, and then also a diver in 2001. And so by 2003, I was teaching classes on underwater UFO search and recovery because I thought, this is the place to hide. So it was I know it's kind of a long story, but I'm probably the last person you would have thought would be the director of underwater research and recovery for anything, since I started out afraid of the water. But, you're better off with dive gear. Yeah. Your snorkelers are on top, they're getting seasick, and the divers are right under there. And I mean, it was kind of a funny story too. In January 25th of 2006, I was diving off of a cruise ship, Royal Caribbean cruise ship in St. Martin. Been diving all day long, and they put me back on the ship at 4:30. The ship left at 6:00 towards St. Thomas. There was nobody out there. Everybody was getting ready for their meals. Back then, now they have what they call, I think it's open or free dining, where you can dine wherever you want. But back there, they had a 6:30 and an 8:30. My group was the 8:30. So I'm walking along, taking pictures of St. Martin because it was only my second cruise, and I hadn't seen anything. I was underwater, which was, by the way, gorgeous. And we got about 20 minutes out. I started walking to the bow of the ship, and I looked off to the side, and there were 2 UFOs. Just they were, I guess, about 50 foot off of the starboard side of the ship, and they were round like this. They looked like they were about the size of cars. They were tilting, I'm thinking, from the wind, but they were moving around like this. And they were saucer-shaped orange. I got one good picture. Well, my first reaction was I turn around and look. I thought it was something from the ship reflecting on the water, and I turned back around, and we were leaving them behind. That was interesting. From then, that was, 2006. Then, like I said, I have a picture. It's in my book. But I realized that you can be in the right place at the right time, but in the wrong area. And also, too, not only were they something that, people said, well, that you can explain it. You can't explain it. I tried. They wouldn't let me talk to the captain. There was really nobody outside. Everybody was in getting ready for dinner or starting to eat, starting to go in to eat at the 6:30 dinner. The only people outside were the crew that were gathering chairs and towels and everything. And I looked over when I got back home, all the date on my camera had reset from January 25th to February 5th. That many, and 11 hours. And so every picture that I took after those, the 2 pictures that I actually got, began from that point on, February 5th. So it was an interesting experience. I'm showing it around the ship. Nobody else saw it but me, but I have a picture to prove it.
Was that on the French side or the Dutch side of St. Martin?
Oh, I don't know. We were going from St. Martin to St. Thomas. So, so I'm not really sure
probably the Dutch side. That's where the port is, I guess.
We weren't, and the sun was not, the sun wasn't there. I when I was going to take pictures of the sunset, which, it wasn't time for the sunset yet anyway, but Like I said, they're in the book. They're orange and saucer shaped with looks like windows all the way around.
Why do you think that they choose? Let me go back to 1973, because that's a special time for me. I was probably 6, 7 years old, and I've told this story before. But that year, every time you saw the newspapers or the TV, there was always something going on. And I always tell the story. They were filming a commercial in one of the tallest buildings, and the advertising company left the cameras on top of the building. They wanted to film all night and then see what, how they do it. They have the sun, in 30 seconds the whole day, and they film it. Well, they did it at night, and when the producers were looking at the footage, they saw a UFO. And they fast forward, and they saw this thing go from left to right at an incredible speed. And that immediately woke me up to this subject when I was about 7 years old. And then, my parents were going to take us to a farm on Saturday to ride horses. And that Saturday morning, they told us, no, sorry, we can't go. When I got the newspaper that my father was reading, it was the cattle mutilations that were happening that year, too. Oh, and I said to my dad, is this why we're not going? Not only are we not going, this happened in the actual place where we're going to be going to spend the day. So 1973 is a special year for you, too. Why is that?
Oh, my goodness. Well, we did have cattle mutilations in the state of Missouri in 1973. And I think those are the ones that Linda Moulton Howe first started investigating.
High strangeness.
She went from Missouri to the San Luis Valley and then started investigating them there. But I went back and did some research on it. That sounds kind of odd, and maybe, where they were chickens, but there was a whole flock of chickens that were mutilated where just the side of their face was gone. I also found in Missouri that our first our first cow mutilation was in a newspaper article I found, and that was in 1898 in southern Missouri, in the same place. But in 1973, not only did we have the cow mutilations, on February.
Did you 21st. Say 1898? Sorry for interjecting.
Oh, yes, 1898.
Like right. The Aurora, Colorado sighting, 1898, I believe, too?
I believe, yes. 1898, we had a cow mutilation. And I found it in a little newspaper article. And that's the earliest that I found in the state of Missouri. And the earliest I found anywhere. But yeah, February 21st of 1973, Coach Reggie Bone from Clearwater High School. He was the high school basketball coach. He was taking some students. Actually, he took the students to the basketball game in Essex, Missouri. It was a playoff game, which unfortunately they lost. And I believe had they not lost, they probably would have been, more jubilant. They would have been teasing and laughing, but they were kind of depressed. They lost the playoff game, so it was pretty quiet in the car coming back. There was also 2 more buses of children that, students that had followed them there for this playoff game. So as the boys were coming back in Mill Springs, they saw this craft. First, they saw these lights, and then they saw a craft that was actually hovering over a field. Well, the boys got out and looked at it. It was maybe 400 foot away into the field and treetop level, and then kind of moved on. Well, right after them, I have an RV and boat storage rental. And one of my customers was telling me that he went to junior high there at the time. And he said the school buses, they said, well, what's Coach Bone and those 5 students looking at? And they, just as they were pulling off, the bus pulled in, and they also saw the craft. They said he said he got woke up. He was sleeping. And he said the bus driver said, well, what's Coach Bone looking at? Some of the students got out and were right underneath this thing. Well, they went back and reported. Apparently, there was over 200 sightings that day, that was about 8:30 in the evening, including Edith Boatwright, who right around 10:30 in the evening saw something that looked like this helicopter. She thought it was an accident outside and peeked out and saw this thing that looked like a helicopter with a rotary in front that was moving by and into the trees. Exactly 1 month later, on March 21st, of 1973, Gene Coleman and Kathy Leach. Now, what had happened was there were so many people seeing things at the highest point in Piedmont, which is about 8 miles from Clearwater Lake. The highest point in Piedmont was the town dump. And so all these people would gather at the town dump. It seemed like kind of an odd place to gather, but they'd gather there and take picnic lunches, and they'd gaze at the stars. It was really something to see.
Want the full story? This is just part one. Now offering video interviews and discounted transcripts for members. Become a VERITAS Plus member today at veritas7.com.
We're always seeing something. Well, things got a little rowdy, and I believe that they decided they had a couple of their daughters with them, and I believe it was Gene Coleman's daughters were with them. So they decided they were going to leave, and they went across Clearwater Lake Dam, and just as they were going across, they saw this craft, and it was hovering over the lake. And they had red lights that were all the way around it. And the lights would go off, and then when they come back on, it was another place. Lights would go off. It was just kind of hovering, moving over the top of the lake. So, at that time there weren't any cell phones, and so they went back over to the dump to see if anybody else had seen anything. And Gene Coleman, she said, she says, anybody else seen anything? And they said, yeah, we saw this UFO and it went toward the lake. And they said, we saw that. And are you seeing anything else? And they said, well, look up. And there was a big amber light over the top of them. And then that went off in the distance. So this was kind of the beginning. They had J. Allen Hynek was out there. All the Missouri MUFON people at the time were out there investigating. There's been books written about it. Harley Rutledge came out that year. He was a professor from the University of Missouri in Cape Girardeau, and he asked for a 2-week grant to study what was going on in the Piedmont area. There was so much going on. The very first night in April of 1973, when he set up his cameras, they got blue lights going through the woods and lights dancing in the sky. And they had so much information that not only he wrote a book on it, a scientific study book, which I've got back there. But there was not only so much going on that, he kept documenting, but the grant extended all the way to 1980. So there was a lot going on in the state. We even had it was October of 1973. There was a gentleman. Oh my gosh, what was his last name? It was sometimes I have to write down my notes because there's just so much stuff. Oh, let's see, what was his name? Oh, in the book, by the way, I wrote that down. It's a Project Identification. It's still out there. It's very expensive to buy, but you can download it for free off of the website. But Eddie Doyle Webb on October 3rd of 1973 was a truck driver, and he and his wife were going toward Cape Girardeau, Missouri, heading down Highway 55 south. And it was about 6:30 in the morning, and his wife was sleeping in the cab. They'd already dropped off. Well, let's see, they dropped off a load, and they were taking the empty truck back to Cape Girardeau. And he looked at his rearview mirror and saw this bright light. And so he looked out into his mirror, and it looked kind of like a spinning top. And then as he looked a little bit more, now Eddie wore glasses, and as he looked a little bit more, this thing flashed and it melted his glasses to his face and blinded him. So he barely got the car, he's driving a big rig with a trailer. He barely got it off of the road. He's hollering Velma May, his wife, hollering at her and saying, I'm blind. So she took over driving the truck, and it was about another 8 miles into Cape Girardeau. And a few years, well, actually when I wrote the second book 2 years ago, I did some research and found the exact spot where this happened. That's Cape Girardeau is only about 90 miles south of where I'm living right now, and actually 90 miles south from where I am right now. So then he makes his way into Cape Girardeau, and they take him to the emergency room, and he had radiation burns on his face. His sight eventually came back, but he lost 15% of his peripheral vision. So the MUFON investigator at the time said was an attorney. We're all volunteers, and the gentleman for his living was for paying living was an attorney, and he said you should file a workman comp claim. Well, they did. He lost 15% of his peripheral vision, and he was at work. They filed a workman's comp claim, and as far as I know, he's the only person that ever won a workman comp claim by from an injury from a UFO while at work.
I think I heard that story before, and the question I have about it is, how do you, if you were the insurance company and you adjudicate and you say, yeah, we're going to agree to this, how do you explain this? What is the cause?
I think the way they best explained it was unexplained. They tried to say that he and his wife set it up, that him and Velma May had got a road flare and they had put it toward him and melted his glasses. But they tried experiments, different kinds, and the road flare would have burnt his face. It would have burned in, like one spot, not because his face was burnt, but it was burnt evenly, almost like a really, really bad sunburn. And it wouldn't have melted his glasses like it did. So no matter what they did, they couldn't prove that it was done on purpose. So it was unexplained, that it was just explained away that he was driving along and there was some type of a bright light that blinded him while he was at work. And they kind of left it as unexplained. I don't know if they ever really admitted that it was a UFO. They said that's what he had said it was, but the courts found that he was severely burned while at work. And he got his workman comp claim.
That's interesting. Why do you think? What do you think, Debbie, that the underwater realm is so overlooked in serious research? I have to give it a shout out to Darcy Weir. I interviewed him for a long time, a couple of times, but he did a great documentary on USOs. But why do you think that this is so overlooked by most researchers? If you go on the web and try to find books about USOs, there's not that many.
No, there's not really. Sorry, my hair keeps getting in my face. I knew Carl Feint. I just got to start to know him. He had a fantastic book on it, and he passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. I don't. People are more, they look up. You don't have as many people in the ocean. Only 5% of our oceans and seas have been have actually been navigated through, have been researched according to NOAA. So we only know 5. We know more about the moon and about Mars than we do underwater. And it was, kind of, well, if you go on a cruise, okay, so you're out in the middle of the water, out in the middle of nowhere. The chances are of seeing anything and being in the right place at the right time is pretty far-fetched. And there's only one cruise ship or another ship or a merchant ship or a military ship. You don't have a lot of population out in the middle of oceans and seas, but you have more sightings, of course, in town. It's like Piedmont. That one day in 1973, there were 200 people that reported something. If I was on a ship and saw 2 UFOs, and then there was a third one that I didn't see till later that was coming in, and I was one person, and I was an explorer of the seas, and there's about, I think there's 3,500 people plus 17 or 18 crew, and it was me. So I think that's a lot of what it is. The military, now I've gone back and found, just by research, sightings that were turned in to Merit, which is it's investigation at sea. Things that happen at sea unexplained. They were trying to explain away a satellite. Some of them came right out and said a UFO, but I have a list just for about 8 years in the 1960s of over 300 sightings, and then I've tried to put together. Columbus had a sighting in October of 1492 coming up into the Caribbean, but there's more people that see things looking up on land because of the population, and there's nobody out there. And so they can get away with coming in and out of the ocean with ease. You have to be at the right place at the right time. And I think that's where they have been hiding forever. I don't think that, we call them visitors. they've been underwater for years. I mean, there's sightings that go back to biblical times. I was looking at sightings and reading descriptions in the Bible, and um, there these things have been around for a very, very long time. And in the ocean, you just don't have somebody there. It's kind of like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound?
That's right. That's right. By the way, Project Identification, the Dr. Rutledge, the influence that he had here. But it's interesting that you are an USO, investigator in a state that's not in a coast. However, the Ozarks, I'm told, has more shoreline than California has coastline. Is that true?
Oh, I don't know. I never really thought about that. Probably we have a lot of lakes and rivers.
It's 1,100 miles as opposed to 840 miles California.
Oh, wow. We have a lot of lakes and streams and rivers. We have three major rivers. I could walk to the Mississippi River over there, and about 8 miles in that direction is the Merrimack River. And then the Missouri River, that's, oh my gosh, maybe 50 miles from me. They all kind of cross, they dump into each other, but the Mississippi River is just right over there. And we've had police officers I had two police officers just in the last couple of years that have had a Tic Tac sighting right off of the Mississippi River. They were just stopped, one at a light, one was shooting radar. We had another lady that was going across the Jefferson Barracks Bridge, and her son got it on cell phone. This Tic Tac at low altitude, just going like a missile right by, heading from Missouri into Illinois. So there's sightings around the Mississippi River, the area that we're working right now, and have been since 2018 is around the Merrimack River, because that's the closest to me, and it just seems like I don't know. There's a lot going on, but it's kind of a long story. But we have investigators, Margie Kay, who's Missouri MUFON Assistant State Director, and she's also a regional MUFON regional director, lives in Independence. And that's 4 hours away on the opposite side of the state. And they have a lot of sightings around Blue Springs Lake and the Missouri River. So we're trying to figure out why. And Missouri is a cave state, so we know that. We know you could travel through caves all over the state of Missouri if you can map your way around and never have to hit the surface. And I believe a lot of the rivers and lakes the same way. We've been tracking things, and we were surprised that if you're able to manipulate your way around, you can make your way a long way underwater. And the sighting that we're looking at now, we've got one in one area where there's a 5 mile difference between. We have 4 different witnesses between 2018 and we haven't been out there this year yet. And just by triangulating it, we believe that they're coming out of a reservoir, and then they're traveling the 5 miles, and then they're going into the Merrimack River. So at one point they have to come above, and then they go in the Merrimack River, they go into caves, and then they travel again. It's a good hiding place. I mean, not only water, but caves.
Waters and caves. Have you heard of the, I believe it was where Malibu, supposedly there's something there and the coast submerged. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I have. There was an article written by somebody in MUFON who said that that was just a natural phenomenon, except that I know that there's some other researchers that have put underwater vehicles, they call it like an underwater drone, and tried to research them, and they could only go down about 100 feet, and all their electronics go out. The researcher who said, well, it was nothing, it was just a natural phenomenon, really never went into it. It was a person that isn't a diver, that doesn't know a lot about water, The anomaly, if you want to land on top of it, is 1,700 feet deep. And she said, well, you can't see it from the surface when you look down. Well, no. No, you can't.
So how is that person coming to that conclusion then?
I don't really know. I know she was on a special on TV about it with Rob Lowell, and they were investigating it. Pretty much everybody on the boat got seasick, and I think they just wanted off of the boat.
Huh.
But Lynn Mann, who is our lab chief lab technician, she found a similar object off of the coast of Japan on Google Earth. And right after she announced that and we started talking about it.
17 seasons of uncensored interviews. While you're hearing part 1 with ads, Veritas Plus members get part 2 immediately, plus video interviews and discounted transcripts. Become a Veritas Plus member today at veritas7.com.
All of a sudden they got blurred out. So you can't find that one anymore. They really can't blur out the one in Malibu because too many people know about it. She said that the first gal that said it was explainable said that they took a vehicle, went underwater, did some scraping on it, and all it was a coral. Well, of course it was coral. We had a boat in the Florida Keys for 12 years, and every 2 weeks we'd have to have the bottom cleaned. I don't know how long that thing's been under there, but that could have been centuries that anomaly has been there. Of course there's coral on it. And I said, did you try and go in? And she goes, well, no, there wasn't any reason. So it was kind of I don't know. I think the investigation could have been done better, but I've talked with people who've tried to go under there and they said the electronics go out. So,
isn't that interesting?
Not a real safe trip to make if you're going to be in there in a mini sub and everything go out.
Well, yeah. Remember what happened to the Titan?
The Titan. Oh, what a tragedy! And that was only 2.5 miles deep. Is where the Titanic's at 2.5 miles. That's why too that I call them residents. I don't think they're visitors. If you've stayed in the same area for more than 2 weeks, you're a resident. And if you set up housekeeping, you're a resident. And if you've been here for centuries, you're definitely a resident. You're not a visitor. But these residents, who knows how long they've been here, are able to hide underwater at depth. It's hard for us to go down to look what happened at 2.5 miles to the Titanic. 2.5 miles is about the average trench. There's a trench off of Puerto Rico that's 5.2 miles deep, about 100 miles from Puerto Rico. And that's, I think, the sixth deepest trench. The deepest is just a little under 7 miles, the Mariana Trench. That's off of, that's like the South Pacific. But the Puerto Rico Trench, I believe, is the deepest trench in the Atlantic.
Well, that's 8,300 meters. That's 27,480 feet, the Puerto Rico Trench.
Oh, my God. And my gosh, when the Titan exploded, that was 6,000 pounds of pressure inward. They don't explode. It goes inward.
Crushed.
Right. I can tell that when I get down to 88 feet, it feels like there's somebody sitting on my chest.
Your heart, yeah.
And I always know I'm at 88 feet. I'll look at my dive computer. I'm like, I'm at 88 feet. I can feel the pressure. And you have to equalize all the way down. Have you heard the story about the Russians? And that was, I believe, off of Lake Baikal, in Lake Baikal, 1982. They had the equivalent of our Navy SEALs. They had 7 Russian divers down 156 feet doing specialty dives, specialty training. And this was 1982. They came across these 4 alien beings, 3 kind of hovering in back and 1 more to the front like the leader. Now, can you imagine if you've ever been diving, if you've ever been swimming in a lake, if you're 156 feet deep, it's cold and it's dark.
Dark.
They've all got, obviously have to have flashlights. they're looking around and they shine their lights, and there's 4 10-foot tall alien beings hovering underwater. So naturally, my first reaction would be to start to swim backward. So they start to they get out of there and they go to the surface. However, you're at that deep, they have to go in levels.
Slowly, yeah.
Oh, depending on how long they were already down there, it could be anywhere between an hour and 2 hours before they can actually surface, because the last 15 feet, you're there, you're there for 15 minutes, 10, 15.
You can't go faster than the bubbles, right?
Oh, no, you can't. Well, not only can you not pass your bubbles, but you have to come up in layers of depth. When I was down at 140 some feet in Cozumel, we did a cave dive and went around and, around in this cave, ended up coming out a wall, a hole in this wall dive at like right at about 138 feet. And then we drifted a little lower, but we then went up to 70 foot, swam around for a while, then up to 50 foot, swam around for a while. And then when we went up to 25 foot and swam around for a while. And then because we were so deep, the last 15 minutes, the last 12 minutes, we were at 15 feet. We were only at 145 or something. I mean, so can you imagine? So these guys are going up in levels little by little to get to the surface, knowing there's these 10-foot tall beings underneath them and thinking, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
Did they know that the beings were there, or was that just a surprise?
No, they were just down there training and came upon them. So then they went, when they got out of the water, they told their superiors, they said, okay, there are 4 big alien beings down there in the water. And they said, what do you think we ought to do? Well, after a few days, it was decided to send these guys back down with a net and try and catch one of them. Now, I'm not sure what they were going to do when they got down there with this big net and throw it over one of them. How are they going to get it to the surface? Little by little, were they going to use airbags and just shoot this thing to the surface and kill it? Because, I mean, if you take a fish from depth and then you take it really fast to the surface when they're fishing, a lot of times that kills the fish.
Yeah.
They'll blow up. So they send these divers back down again. And sure enough, they come across these 4 alien beings. 2 of the divers took the net and went to put it over the lead alien. So like I said, there were 3 in back, 1 in front. And as they went to put this net over this alien, 10-foot tall alien in front, it put its hand out like that. All 7 divers went immediately to the surface. This is in Lake Baikal in Russia.
So they got scared.
No, he put his hand out like that, and this pressure shot them all.
Oh, so there's a force that pushed them up.
A force pushed them up. He put his hand out, and all the divers had no control. They immediately just shot to the surface, out of control.
Wow.
When they hit the surface, 3 of them died almost immediately.
Of course.
From decompression. Your blood literally boils. They took the other 4 and tried to save them. They had 2 decompression chambers. 1 was broke. They stuffed all 4 of the guys in one of the chambers, and 3 more died. Only 1 survived that. So then it was decided after that, there was a huge hearing, and it was decided they weren't going to train in that lake anymore. And then there's another sister lake not too far. They weren't going to train in that one either. So that's just one case. Let's see, it was B. Borovikoff was a shark hunter. And back around the same time, he was diving and hunting with a spear gun for sharks. And he saw alien beings came up with 10-foot tall with big bulgy eyes that came up and swam around him and then went back underneath. Now, the ones at the bottom, they had helmets on and kind of like a breathing device, but no tank or anything. And then the other ones that came up before were just swimming. Borovikoff didn't say anything about how they had any kind of dive gear. So there are several different stories in around Russia with these giant beings, 7-foot tall beings, are swimming in around Lake Baikal, the Baltic Sea. So I believe they're living under there. There was a research ship with windows, and they saw one swim by at 1,300 feet.
And this is what I'm seeing from this report. They were, you're right, they were about 9 feet tall, wearing tight-fitting silver suits, no visible scuba gear or oxygen tanks. They're observed swimming and moving naturally at depths without equipment. So they must be all over the place, not just there.
Well, the only report so far, we've been researching the Leonard Stringfield files, and I was going through their Leonard Stringfield diaries to put them on the MUFON website, our Project Aquarius. And going through them, what we have to do is redact out people's names, addresses, phone numbers, that type of thing. You know, some of the names you leave in, but then there's other names of people that you really can't leave in. And as I was reading through, there was one in, I was in the early 1970s, and they said there was a very famous diver at the time. Gosh, I wonder who that might be. I don't know, but my guess would be Jacques Cousteau, but I couldn't verify that. But they said it was a very, very famous diver at the time, and an anthropologist were diving off of Florida. And as they were diving, you know, fairly deep, but I imagine it was under 100, less than 130 feet. They were just recreational diving, that they came across a 7-foot tall being sitting on a rock. And it didn't have any dive gear on. It was just sitting on a rock. And they got a little bit closer to look at it, and it started to swim deeper. And then it stopped and turned around and looked at him and then kept on going. Now, that's the only report I found so far that's in around the United States with giant beings underwater. But there was sure one reported in the 70s.
I haven't seen the description, though. I see that they're wearing these suits, but no masks, no tanks. No. You probably have heard of these alleged mermaids, a merman.
I have. And I wondered, wasn't there one just a few years ago that washed on shore? And then all of a sudden that was hushed up, wasn't it?
Yep.
You didn't hear any more about it. And then they tried to say, well, somebody did that and they faked it. And
I mean, there are videos. There's this young man who keeps putting videos. Apparently he works as a merchant marine. And he's all over the world. And all of a sudden, at night, he comes out when everybody's sleeping, and he records these yellings. It's like these screams, almost like they're following him. So, obviously, governments have this under wraps. They don't want us to be talking. And you probably know this. There's a law against communicating with cetaceans. Did you know that? There's really a law that you cannot communicate with dolphins, whales, or porpoises. I just found that out a few weeks ago.
Well, I know that you can't, you're not supposed to go anywhere around manatee. I knew that from when we had the place in the Florida Keys. We had our boat in the water and in Key Largo, and we had our boat in a canal, and then we would go out into the sound and then out into the ocean. But if you're not supposed to feed them, you're not supposed to touch them. If you're in the water and one goes by, you can't put your hand out. You can get arrested. At the very least, you get fined for touching.
But I can see that. But then you have the others that are mammals.
Yeah.
And supposedly they're the guardians of the oceans.
Mammals, well, whales, dolphin, manatee, they're all mammals.
Well, that's right. But the manatees are more like sea lions, right? More of that type.
Manatee, yeah, it looks almost like a walrus.
Like a walrus, right.
They're big. Oh, they're about 10 foot from nose to tail, and even the babies are my size. Like a little over 5 foot tall. They had a mama that would come in and have her baby and stay in our canal until we'd have to be really careful bringing the boat in and out that we didn't hit her.
When you think of manatees, you only think Florida. Do they exist anywhere else? I
don't really know. I've really only seen them in around Florida.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure.
So let's go back to Piedmont for a moment.
Oh, Piedmont?
Because Piedmont, that's a huge thing. Over 500 reports. I mean, we're talking about business owners, people that are credible police, but you don't hear that much about that case anymore. It's probably one of the most important cases in UFO history, or USO history, rather.
Well, the one that Reggie Bone and the students saw was over a field, but then Kathy Leach and Gene Coleman, which Gene Coleman still lives in the area, She's lives in a little. She has a dress store right on Main Street, and also a couple of the basketball players still live there. There's a few of the people from back there that investigated are still living in town, but the one over Clearwater Lake, you don't hear about it. And I can tell you why. It's kind of not, I guess, not funny, haha, but funny, odd that we had a construction company for 30 years, and some of our employees have family in Piedmont. And they said that they'd go out in the summertime and just watch the UFOs dancing around, or in the winter sometimes when the sky is really crystal clear. That was just kind of the thing to do. They don't even report it. The reports that we get on UFOs in Piedmont are from people that are new in town or people that are camping. The people that live there are so used to seeing these lights dancing around the sky, they don't even report it anymore. So back in 2023 was the 50th anniversary of the sighting in 1973. So MUFON, our local Missouri MUFON, decided that we should go and visit Piedmont and say, are you going to have a festival and celebrate? And a lot of people in town didn't even know.
Loving this interview? We have 17 seasons of content just like this, plus part 2 of every episode, all ad-free for Veritas Plus members. Become a member today at veritas7.com.
They were younger people, the town council and the Chamber of Commerce. They didn't even know about that. They said, well, our parents talked about that. And we told them, you should have a big festival. Well, they not only did, they had a fantastic festival celebrating that. They have a festival every year now. Margie and I wrote a book so there would be information for people that wanted to know about Piedmont, because I had a lot of newspaper articles that a very nice investigator, Dave Marler, who's from Sedona, he gave me these articles years ago, and I promised him I'd put them in a book because I live in Missouri, and he used to, but he doesn't anymore. But we did a lot of research on it and put this book out. Well, they got so excited about the festival, and we had speakers move on. People were down there speaking that they there was someone. Oh gosh, I can't remember her name, but there was a legislature that put before the bill in the state of Missouri in Congress, and they designated Piedmont, Missouri, as the UFO capital of the state of Missouri. And so now they're having a festival every year. It's in April. The date changes, but they have a night parade. They show. They have a movie. Actually, still have a drive-in movie theater, and they show Close Encounters at the movie.
Ah, wow! It's like Roswell, then the Roswell Festival.
Oh, right, yeah. And so that's what I was telling him. I said, you have to have a night parade. Roswell does it, and it's great. And so they dress everybody up in night glow, nightsticks and lights. And I mean, it's really great. They have contests. The businesses decorate the front of their businesses and UFOs, and they have contests for that. They have a bus tour that takes you around and shows you all the place. This is where the field where this happened, and I mean, it's really a great festival. They have a really great little museum there that still has UFO things in it. So it's a great town to visit. And they have a park, a UFO park. I haven't been back. I was supposed to go back this week. We're at Monday, so I think Wednesday I'm going back to Piedmont and talk with someone who's a witness that's had sightings, and he's an older gentleman, and so we're going to have lunch and meet and talk about them.
I used to be in the restaurant business for over 25 years, and people don't know this, but I at one point bought the Alien Cafe in Sedona.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's still there as a UFO outside. It's just fascinated me when I saw it. So I almost did, but I got out of that industry. But going back to your story, Catalina, is that Catalina Island in California?
Yes.
Tell me about that story. And I used to fly from Orange County to Catalina all the time, so that's an interesting area.
Well, let's see. It was back in the 1980s. There was a gentleman that he and his brother, he was flying, and had his cousin with him. Gosh, I can't remember his name just drew a blank. I believe it was 1982, but they were flying around Catalina Island. If you've ever been to Catalina Island, the airport's right at the top of the mountain.
Yep, great.
And they saw a UFO underwater, and it shot a beam of light out, took them down. The pilot's back was broken, and the cousin was killed. But in 1992, there were over 200 UFOs seen, and not reports, over 200 UFOs that were seen coming out of the water, and they would hover and then take off at a high rate of speed. So I thought, okay, I've been to Catalina several times, and I thought, well, if they saw that, then what about the coastline? Well, I found out that right off of Malibu, that several people had also seen this going on and had notified the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard said, oh, nothing to see here. We're not going to investigate it. So they just brushed it under the table. I know they had to investigate. You got 200 UFOs coming out of the water. There's going to be something going on. Well, back 1947, the same time as the same 4th of July weekend as the Roswell. Yeah. There was a sighting. Several people saw UFOs that were flying over Catalina Island.
Do you think that the UFO flap of the late 40s was really due to the nuclear detonations in New Mexico?
I started to think that, but because I've been to Roswell. Oh my goodness. I started going in 2000. I've been on 2 archaeology digs, and then also on another fact finding research with Don Schmidt. He's fantastic. He's the lead investigator there at the Roswell Museum. And we went out, I believe it was last April. But I've interviewed a lot of people there, and I kind of focused on that. I used to know Jesse Marcel Jr. very well. I focused on that for 1947, and then it started coming up, like you said, that, well, wait a minute, that's the area, White Sands, where they were detonating. But not only there, most people don't know. I went to school in Safford. I went to
Arizona.
Grade. Yes. I went to first grade in Thatcher. That's where my grandma lived. We lived in Michigan, and my dad was a World War II veteran with frostbite legs. His legs were frostbitten. We couldn't live in Michigan anymore. That's where his family was from. So we went back to Thatcher, where he had gone to school and met my mom, and they had got married. Well, we went back there when I was 5. I went to first grade in Thatcher, and then second grade through my freshman year of high school, Safford. And I remember back in grade school, we would be, we couldn't go out and play that day because there was a radioactive cloud going over. They had detonated something outside of Tucson. Most people don't know that. We did all the duck and cover, but that we're all looking at out the door, looking up to see if we could see this radiation cloud. Well, they wouldn't let us go outside and play recess. And then about an hour and a half later, school ends, and we all walked home. That doesn't make any sense at all.
And in Tucson, we have the Titan missile range here.
Oh, right. So, I always thought, well, just that whole area did the nuclear testing, and maybe that's why they were around. But there's sightings. They're all up and down the East Coast. I mean, the whole United States had sightings in 1947. The only reason that Roswell was more in the news is because they actually captured a craft.
But how do we know, Debbie? Because everybody thinks, extraterrestrial craft. Mm-hmm. But 70% of this planet is ocean. Why do we even call it Earth and not ocean? Arthur C. Clarke said that at one point. Oh. If these beings, what if they're from here and they're from under the water? And when the children come out and play with matches, like we did in the 40s with nuclear weapons, mm-hmm. If they're here, they're going to be affected by that as well. Oh. And obviously they're more advanced than we are, so they come out and check out what's going on. I mean, look at 1967, Malmstrom, Captain Robert Salas, that they deactivated the silos in Malmstrom, Montana. Oh,
right. I mean, and what you don't realize is if, they started detonating these things on the surface. Then they started detonating them underground. Then they started detonating them in the water in the Pacific. And an equal force goes down that comes up. I can't believe that that with whoever was living is living underwater and underground. I don't know if they left the area interdimensionally or they just held on tight or what the heck. But I don't know. It was just insane. There's video of them detonating these things in the ocean and actually took out a couple of our Navy vessels.
Yeah.
They want to see the reaction of them. What? I mean, they'd have the soldiers, they say, here, put these goggles on and, we're going to detonate this thing. And then you see their hair blowing in the wind and, from the pressure from the bomb. And then, we were told when I was a kid in Arizona that if you saw the flash, you duck and cover. We pretty much know now if you saw the flash, you're probably going to die from radiation.
Or incinerated by the fire.
Yeah. Get under your desk. Duck and cover. We had drills like we have here in Missouri. They have tornado drills here in Missouri. We had duck and cover there.
Yes, if duck and cover, then it's going to save your life. I remember that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where the movie Red Dawn. Remember Red Dawn?
Yes. Yeah. It's.
So how did you go from being terrified about being in the water? And like you, I almost drowned when I was about 6 years old. What drove you to transform yourself into an investigator of all these?
Well, maybe a curiosity. They always say curiosity killed the cat, huh? Like I said, in 2001, I was probably the last person you'd ever think would become an instructor. And so what I decided to do was we had a boat and a house in the Florida Keys, and my son, our friends all dove, and my son, my husband. And so I thought, okay, I need to conquer this. And I just kept taking more and more classes. I met this very nice gentleman named Roger. And when I went back to do advanced, because I thought, okay, well, I've conquered open water, but the next step is advanced. And my husband and my son said, I'm not diving with you. So I met this very nice gentleman named Roger, who's a firefighter, St. Louis City firefighter. And he and I just, young man, he and I started going through classes together. He goes, oh, come on, you've got a boat in Florida. You need to know rescue. And we went through, we only got paired up because we were the only people that showed up. And so for the class, everybody else canceled out. It was too cold. I think it was in April and it was really cold out. So we did the class. Then he talked me into going through rescue. And he said, you might need this, having a boat. And I said, oh, okay. And then he said, okay, the next step, everybody, I thought he meant master diver, which is more training. But I took this class. It was dive master, which is basically an assistant to an assistant instructor. And it was all firefighters and hospital people and police officers and me. I was like Private Benjamin. And so I was like the little mascot, the oldest one there. And from there, we just all of us started teaching classes, and we started going on these dive trips, discount dive trips, the whole dive shop that we were working for. And before I knew it, I thought, wait a minute, we're working for free. And Roger said, we got to become instructors. We're at least going to get paid and we'll start our own business. And that's what we did in 2007. And just to go on with the story, everybody's wondering, whatever happened to Roger? Well, Roger got divorced. My daughter got divorced, and they're now married. So they kind of met about 5 years after Roger and I met. Just my daughter was helping us out diving, and she goes, "That's your business partner?" And Roger goes, "That's your daughter?" Well, they've been married, I think, for 12 or 13 years now. They're a very happy, nice couple. But that's kind of how I met a very nice gentleman that kept encouraging me, and the funniest part was my husband and my son wouldn't go diving with me because I passed out underwater my first open water dive. But now if you look at their dive cards, I'm the instructor on their open water card. So
you flipped it.
Yeah, poetic justice, huh?
Yeah.
No, they wouldn't dive with me. Now I'm their instructor. So
We have to take our one and only break. Let me just tell this story. But I remember when my wife and I were taking, diving lessons before we got married, because we were going to, take a trip to the Caribbean and Mexico to dive. And we were practicing in Mexico, and we were probably 40, 50 feet under, and I was her diving buddy. And all of a sudden, a sea lion came in when she was cleaning, with the regulator mouthpiece. You have to clean your mask, right? You know how it goes. So she's kind of removing the mask a little bit, and this sea lion took the mask from her.
No.
She freaked out. She took her regulator piece from her mouth, 40 feet under, and then she started just going up, and I had to grab her leg to avoid her from just going up. Anyway, she didn't want to do that again, but I love diving. But also one other story, and you're going to expound on this story when we come back. Before we started this show, there was a lady here in Arizona, and when I started this show, she started sending me videos. She was filming with infrared goggles. That's at the time when they actually came out, the green ones. And she was filming these orbs here in Arizona. And after 3 weeks of sending me videos, she says, I got a laser. I pointed the laser at the thing. All of a sudden, it transformed into FAA lights. And I couldn't see the green or the red, but it almost behaved like a plane, almost like saying, no, I'm a plane, I'm not an orb. But you have a similar story that's incredible, and it's kind of funny and interesting story, too. You'll tell us when we come back. But tell us, how can people buy the books, the 50th anniversary, your other book, and your website?
Just go to Amazon and type in Debbie Ziegelmeyer, and my books come right up. And the one, the alien colonization of Earth's waterways, comes in three different formats. So don't get scared if you see this book that's like $59. That's a hardcover in color. Then it also comes in soft cover in color, and then black and white. I think black and white's only 24 something. And then the other book is I think I don't remember if it's color, but I read out of them. So I didn't have one here. But then both the books are right there if you want to buy a book. Amazon.
Excellent. One more hour to come with Debbie Ziegelmeyer. This is Mel Hoslerich, and you are listening to VERITAS. Don't go anywhere. Thank you for listening to the first part of this important VERITAS episode. To listen to the rest and access all of our exclusive material, head over to the Veritas Plus member section or click the subscribe button at veritasproject.com. Don't forget to visit the Veritas store for a range of great products, including focused life force energy. Experience the benefits with a 15-day free trial of FLFE today. No credit card required. Also, be sure to explore our enhanced Veritas Plus transcripts, offering full transcripts, comprehensive analysis, and exclusive insights for every episode. As a Veritas Plus member, you'll receive a 50% discount on these enhanced transcripts. And speaking of things to enjoy, if you've been liking the bumper music you've been hearing during the show, you're in luck. All of it is produced by us for your enjoyment. If a song has caught your ear, you can buy it. Just head to each episode's page for the link and take the music home with you. If you'd like to get in touch with me, be a guest on the program, have a guest suggestion, or want to provide feedback, just click the contact button on our website at veritasproject.com. Thank you for listening to The Veritas Project, because you don't want to believe, you want to know.